Hey, Simón, we're going to thank you so much for now. We're going to come back to you after we've heard from Dr. Herrera. So stay tuned and thank you so much.
Thank you. No problem.
Now, everybody, I would like to please introduce you to our guest speaker. So in 1986, Dr. Herrera received his PhD from Oxford University on the behavior of capybaras. After this, he became a professor at University of Simón Bolívar in Caracas, Venezuela, where he stayed until he retired just a few years ago. His interests are researching the behavior with capybaras, how do group living, mating behavior, social hierarchy, and how does this all help with the survival and a reproductive system for the individuals? So, Dr. Herrera, thank you so much for joining us from another country today. We are thrilled to have you. I'm going to hand over to you and you can teach us all about our capybaras.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. I love doing this. It's very nice to talk to people who are interested in these incredible animals. And you can call me Emilio. I think that Dr. Herrera sounds difficult and a bit too formal. But anyway. Yes, I don't know where to start. Maybe by commenting on mentioning something that was just mentioned by your zookeeper, just because it didn't sound quite right. This thing about the capybaras going to the bathroom in the water because that would help hiding the scent. Are people hearing me? I'm not sure if people can hear. Yes?
We can hear you fine. Yes.
Okay, sorry, it's because my screen is black, so I don't know what's happening. So anyway, they in the wild they do that. Sometimes I've seen them actually walk into the water, defecate, and then come back out. That does happen, but not all the time, and I would say not even often. It's just something they do sometimes, and I'm not sure why. There are lots and lots and lots, hundreds, because I did collect them, droppings everywhere on land where they are abundant. And so maybe it's something to do with abundance or the availability or the size of the water pond or something, I don't know. But they do defecate a lot on land, and I've used that to collect feces and just to find them and everything, and so it's everywhere. And about the scent hiding detail, which is interesting, I had never heard of that. They produce a lot of secretion from two scent glands. One is on the anal gland, which is completely differently developed in males and females. Males have a crystalline structure. It's like bits of stone even, which it's like hairs covered in stone. It's very, very strange. And females don't have that. They have a very wet gland, what you actually expect from a gland, to have a secretion, a creamy sort of secretion. And the males have a snout scent gland, highly developed, which you have probably seen that in your animals in the zoo. And they also produce a large amount of secretion from that, which they rub on vegetation in their territories. So in terms of hiding the scent, they actually produce a lot of scent and disperse it all over the place on land. So hiding their scent by defecating in the water doesn't sound very effective, since they are actually, producing scent from scent glands and marking their territories very frequently, both males and females, in different ways. Males mark more with their snout gland and females mark more with their anal gland. And so anyway, that was just something I wanted to comment from your zookeeper, which sounded interesting, but I don't think it's the actual situation in the field anyway, in the wild. Where do you want me to start? Maybe I like to relate capybaras to the other animals in their taxonomic group, in their zoological position, which is the caviomorphs, which are very interesting rodents. They're exclusive to South America, Central America, and so I don't know how far they get into North America. The agoutis are well known in that group, but there's also maras, There's all kinds of chinchillas. The pacas is another interesting caviomorph. And the caviomorphs are a completely different group of rodents. They don't look like rats. They don't look like mice. They just look like what they are. You know, sometimes they look like small antelopes. In fact, there are some incredibly similar antelopes to some of the caviomorphs. Like the paca is very similar to something called the chevrotain, which is an antelope from India, I think it is. And there's also something called the goa, which is also an Indian or Asian sort of antelope, which is very, very similar to the bara, which is another caviomorph found in Argentina. And the capybara looks a little bit like a pygmy hippo, not too much, but it's a little bit of an ecological equivalent. But of course, the pygmy hippo is twice as big, or even more than twice as big as a capybara, maybe 3 times as big as a capybara. But they're also semi-aquatic, they're also round-shaped. There are some similarities. Anyway, that's the zoological group of the capybaras are. And they tend to be large, or these caviomorphs, and they also tend to be very precocious. They're born like many antelopes and deer. They're born very active. They can eat grass within days of being born. So that's also an interesting aspect of their life cycle. There are 2 species of capybara. The one you have, this is the most better known one, which is everywhere in South America except Chile. And then there's another one, it's slightly smaller one, which is found in parts of northern Venezuela, northern Colombia, and Panama. It's a very, very restricted area where they are found. And they're not so well known as the other capybara. The one I've studied is, of course, the common one, which is everywhere else. So one of the things that I did study a little bit. It wasn't the main focus of my research, which was the diet and the digestive system. Again, everybody can hear me because I get no feedback at all, so I don't know if it's okay. Okay.
We can hear you.
Right. It's a shame that I can't show slides or anything. I do have a link to something I'm going to mention just now. So capybaras are herbivores. They eat grass, mostly, almost exclusively grass. They eat a few other plants, but it's mostly grasses. And they are what is called hindgut fermenters, which means that they do the same thing that cows do, which is to digest, to have a pouch, part of the digestive system, which is a sac, where the microbiome, the microbes, the bacteria, are the ones that actually digest the cellulose, which is very abundant, but it's almost impossible to digest by any animal. Virtually no animal can digest that. Every herbivore depends on the microbes in their digestive system to digest the grass, the vegetation. But the cows have a stomach, have another stomach up here, which they use for that, and then they regurgitate the food that has been partially digested, pre-digested by the microbes, and then it goes back down. This is the process called rumination, and then it goes back to the normal part of the normal stomach, the regular stomach, and then down to the intestine. The capybaras don't have that. They have a cecum, which is located between the small intestine and the large intestines, and that's where they have the microbial digestion. The problem with that is that after that there is no part of the digestive system that can absorb the nutrients that have been digested by the microbes. So all that's left is the part where feces are produced, which is the large intestine. The large intestine, yes. And so after that, there's only feces being produced. So they can't regurgitate like cows do. So what they do is they resort to coprophagy, which is they eat their own feces because they are full of all these nutrients that have been released by the microbes who have actually digested the food they ate. So they have to recycle the feces. what they do is they spend the evenings, say after 4 p.m., and then they eat all late afternoon and then into the night. And then at about 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, they stop and they rest all the morning until it's too hot and they go into the water to cool down. But in that period, when they are resting after having been eating for several hours during the night, they start doing this thing called coprophagy, which is that they actually put their mouths into the anus, onto the anus, not into, and they defecate into their mouths, and the feces then go back again completely through their digestive system, and that's when they can absorb the nutrients, not exactly nutrients released, but the pre-digested vegetation, which they can now absorb and take advantage of the fermentation process that the microbes performed in the cecum, which is, as I said, at the end of the digestive system. So I found that very interesting. Actually, I discovered that. Nobody knew that happened in capybaras. That was my first scientific paper published in 1989 or something. And so that was very interesting. And then after that, we did publish a couple of papers on the microbial community inside the digestive system of capybaras. So anyway, that's one thing about how they live and what they eat. The other thing is the fact that they live always near the water. Your zookeeper mentioned that. They use the water for defecating. They do that, not for whatever reason. But they also use that, especially in the tropics. The capybaras are distributed all the way south to Argentina. And in parts of Argentina where they live they are not tropical. They are subtropical or even temperate. So the temperature can go down quite a lot. But in the tropics, in Brazil and Venezuela and Colombia, that doesn't happen. It's warm or even hot year round. So they do have to thermoregulate in the water. So what they do is they spend the mornings, as I said, resting and doing this coprophagy. And then after 2 p.m. or so, they go into the water to cool down. And then when the evening does cool down, then they go out of the water and they start grazing, as I said, late afternoon and evening and into the night. And so what they do is they live in groups next to the water. And it's very interesting, at least in the area that I studied them in Venezuela, they form group territories. The territories have a group, the groups have a territory, sorry. And this territory is defended by all members of the group. It's very interesting that some animals can wander into the neighbor's territory and all these guys fight them away. They actually chase them away, and they have interesting fighting. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And they seem to know whose land is whose, and so which land is whose. And so they avoid trespassing, literally, they avoid trespassing into the neighbor's territory. And when they do, they encounter resistance from their neighbors. And this is a group thing. We are used to thinking of territory of being an animal or maybe a pair, but this is not. This is group members are as members. I mean, they stay together for years, the same animals. And so they know who's who, and they know who's not from a member of the group, and so they chase them away. So these groups have a social system, which is the thing with the most obvious thing in these groups is the composition, of course, which is several males, 2, 3, 4 males, and then 5, 6, or 8 females. 10 or more animals, more adults are group members, and there's all the young of the year, and some older young can be around as well. And the most obvious feature of these groups is the dominance hierarchy, which is extremely clear. I mean, the dominant male is is never chased away, very rarely, and he keeps his dominant position for several years, and nobody, again, nobody, it's not that exactly like that, but it's very rare that he's challenged in his dominant position. And the positions within the hierarchy, number 1, 2, 3, are also quite clear. The animals remain in those positions for months or even years. And when the dominant male dies or is chased away by someone, which can happen, then all animals get one step up in the hierarchy in a sort of queue system that they're going up. So there's probably an age-related thing with the older animals at the top of the hierarchy and the younger animals at the bottom. Does anybody have a question about what I've said or anything else?
I don't think we haven't had any questions come through yet, but we do have to wind up in about a minute. So I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah. But if anybody has any questions, just please put them in the chat box now.
It's just half an hour and that's it?
Okay, we actually have a little, whoop, hang on. Where am I? There we go. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we really appreciate this. Emilio, thank you. I'm calling you Emilio now.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was amazing. For those who want to see this again, it will be on Friends of Hyde Park Zoo YouTube channel. And I'm just going to plug our next one, June the 5th at 1 p.m. We will be talking about bison. But maybe Emilio, maybe we can have you back again because there's so much to talk about with capybara.
Yes.
And ours are world famous, as you possibly know, when they did venture
Yes,
into
I know.
the park.
I remember that, yeah.
But we were so happy when they came back safely. And there's so much to learn about them. And we really appreciate your time. And thank you for coming from, where did you say you were today? You are in?
I'm living in Madrid now.
In Madrid. Well, you right now are our furthest, most distant speaker, so we really appreciate your time. If there are any questions, we'll get them from people, and maybe we can ask them of you, and we can then